Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 7. Teams are made. Konoha Academy. For the second time in his life, Naruto was early to the academy, and for good reasons this time too. Today was the day that he would be assigned to a team to begin their careers as shinobi of Konoha. He hoped and prayed that he would be put on a team with his friends, and with a sensei that liked him. His thoughts were interrupted when he felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up to see Hinata looking at him with concern in her eyes. "Hey, are you okay, Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked. Naruto smiled and said, "Don't worry, Hinata-chan, I was just thinking about what teams we were going to be on." "I really hope that we're on the same team," Hinata said with a blush on her face. "Me too, I really hope that neither of us are paired with the Tem and Banshee, that would suck." "I can hear you, you baka," Sakura screeched as she gave a glare at Naruto. "And Sasuke-kun is not a Tem. He's the most wonderful person in the world." Did you hear something, Hinata-chan?" "Kiba, Shikamaru, how about you, Choji, are you Shino?" Naruto asked. "You say something, Naruto," Kiba asked as he pulled out the earplugs that were in his and Akamaru's ears. Shikamaru slept through the whole thing. Choji swallowed his chips and said, "I didn't hear anything. I thought I heard something, Naruto-san, but I then realized that it was just hot air being blown through the room," Shino said. Everyone stopped what they were doing and started at Shino with wide eyes. Did Shino just make a joke?" Kiba asked. Shino frowned and said, "I am trying to become more social with all of my friends." "Did I say something wrong?" No, Naruto reassured. "We were just shocked that you made a joke. You're usually a quiet person, so it was a shock to us." "I see, perhaps I should become more social with everyone before I start creating jokes." "That seems like the most logical thing to do," Shino said. "Troublesome. There's just so many surprises today," Shikamaru sighed. Hinata then tapped Naruto on the shoulder, causing him to look over. "I saw that there's another small bee bump on you coat. Did you get another heart?" she whispered. Luckily, Kiba was in an argument with Ino and couldn't hear her. "Yeah, I'll tell you all about it later," Naruto said. Hinata nodded and leaned back into her chair. Just then Iruka walked in with the support of some crutches. "Iruka-sensei, what happened to you?" Hinata asked. "There was an incident in the village a few days ago and I got hurt in the process," Iruka told her. "But if there was a problem, why didn't they have Sasuke-kun help?" Sakura asked, making most of the class roll their eyes at the Kunoichi hopeful's devotion to the Uchiha Saiyan. Iruka sent her a glare and said, "Because Sakura, the Hokage, wanted all Chunin and above to be involved because of how serious it was." Sakura just blushed and looked away, but the rest of the class was laughing at the Pinket's embarrassment. "Now if you would all kindly shut up now, I'm going to be announcing the teams that have been made. Some of you may not like them, but that's how it's going to be," Iruka said as he placed a clipboard on the podium and began to read off of it. "Teams 1 to 6 are unimportant. Team 7 will be made up of Sasuke Uchiha," Iruka began, making every girl go onto the edge of their seats in anticipation. "Sakura Haruno, yes, true love conquers all," Sakura yelled as she stood up on her seat and cheered. Sasuke was crying on the inside because he could already see how annoying this would be. "Why does Forehead get to be with Sasuke-kun? It should be me," Ino yelled. "Shut it, Ino pig," Sakura growled. "Hey, I pity the guy who gets stuck with them," Kiba said as he leaned back into his chair. "And Kiba Inuzuka, your sensei will be Kakashi Hatake," Iruka finished. "What?" Kiba yelled as he fell out of his chair in shock. Akamaru jumped from the falling boy and landed in Hinata's lap where she began to console the whining pooch. Naruto patted Kiba on the back and said, "Good luck, man, I hope you survive." "I'm doomed," Kiba wailed as he sunk to his knees. Akamaru let out a howl of despair alongside his partner. "I really feel bad for Kiba, but I can't really do anything about it except pray to Kami that it all turns out well for him," Iruka thought as he watched the whole ordeal. "Team 8, Iruka began, will be made up of Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga. Please let Naruto-kun me be on my Hinata-chan's team," Hinata and Naruto thought simultaneously. "And Naruto Uzumaki, Your sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi, Iruka finished, silently thanking Kami for allowing those friends to stay together. Naruto grinned when he heard that he would be with his friends. He turned towards Hinata and gave her a fox-like grin while she just blushed, but had a small smile on her face. Yosh, let's become the best ninja team ever, Hinata-chan, Shino. Naruto declared. Both of them just nodded in agreement. Team 9 is still active from last year, so we're going to move on, Iruka said. Team 10 will be made up of Choji Akamichi, Shikamaru Nara, and Ino Yamanaka. Your sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Why am I stuck with these two lazy bums? Ino wailed as she slammed her head on the desk. Iruka then looked at all the kids in his class and said, you'll meet your Junin senseis after lunch. So be sure to come back here later. It's been a pleasure teaching you all, and I hope to hear great things about you. With that said, he hobbled out of the room, leaving everyone else to their own devices. Junin Lounge. Kurenai Yuhi was a newly promoted Junin and was already being assigned a team. She was a young woman with light skin and a slender build. She had long black hair that reached her shoulders and was kept out of her face by her headband. She was wearing an outfit that seemed to be made of bandages while only her right arm was sleeved. Her hands and upper thighs were wrapped in bandages. She sighed as she remembered the events that had happened in the Hokage's office earlier that day. Flashback. Sandame's office. Hokage-sama, I believe that there is a problem with the team assignments, Kurenai said as she stood before the Hokage with another Junin next to her. He was a relatively tall man with silver, spiky, gravity-defying hair. He was wearing the standard Junin outfit, complete with the vest. The lower half of his face was covered by a mask and his forehead protector was covering his left eye. The right one was lazily reading a orange-covered book while he nodded in agreement. I have to agree with her, Hokage-sama, the Junin said. Hiruzen sighed. He was expecting this. What seems to be the problem, Kakashi, Kurenai? I formally put in a request to receive a team made out of Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, and Kiba Inuzuka. Instead, I received Naruto Uzumaki instead of Kiba. I wanted the Uzumaki kid instead of the Inuzuka, Kakashi said. Hiruzen rubbed his temples and said, if you got the team you wanted, then both of your teams would have been highly unbalanced. Kurenai was confused. Can you please explain, Hokage-sama? She asked. If you had gotten Kiba instead of Naruto, your team would be greatly underpowered. I understand that the Inuzuka clan has a high skill in taijutsu, but with Naruto, he could last longer in a fight. And I'm sure that he would surprise you in one way or another. As for your team, Kakashi, you received Kiba because your team would need a tracker. With Naruto on it instead of Kiba, your team would never be able to track down a target through special means, such as the Inuzuka's relationship with their Ninken. But with Naruto on my team, he could form a healthy rivalry with Sasuke and form a bond with him that could keep him tied to the village, Kakashi argued. Hiruzen wanted to punch the man through the wall, but managed to calm himself. That would never work, Hiruzen said. Sasuke hates Naruto, Sakura hates Naruto, and Naruto hates them both. That team would collapse the moment you leave them unsupervised. Besides, I think Kiba would be able to give the Uchiha a nice challenge every once in a while. Kakashi just shrugged and turned the page in his book and said, if that is what you wish, Hokage-sama. He then vanished in a puff of smoke. I'm still unsure about this, Kurenai said. Hiruzen lit his pipe and said, just give it a try, I'm sure you'll like it. Kurenai then vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving the Hokage all alone. Flashback end. Kurenai then got up and walked out of the lounge and made her way to the academy. Might as well get this over with, she muttered. Academy noon. Naruto was sitting between Hinata and Shino as they waited for their sensei. Behind them were Kiba, Shikamaru, and Choji. So when are they going to be here? Naruto asked. Possibly any moment now, Shino said as he watched a beetle crawl across his hand. I hope they get here soon, I'm almost out of chips, Choji said as he popped another one into his mouth. Team 10. A voice called out. Everyone looked to see a tall man wearing a standard Junin uniform with his hands in his pockets. He had black hair that was connected to his slightly pointed beard. In his mouth was a cigarette that hung loosely. Shikamaru, Choji, and Ino stood up, though Ino was reluctant, and began to walk out of the door. But before they left, Shikamaru looked over his shoulder. I'd tell you to wish me luck, but that would be too troublesome, he said as he walked out the door. Choji laughed as he followed his friend. I should have expected that from that lazy bum, Naruto said as he shook his head. Does anyone know anything about our sensei? Hinata asked. I've never heard of her, Shino said. I think she's a new Junin, Kiba said. At least, that's what I heard from my sister when we were at dinner a few weeks ago. Naruto huffed and said, I wanted someone who was world famous. Hinata giggled at his antics and Shino just rolled his eyes behind his shades. Team 8, a voice asked. The members of said team looked over to see Kurenai standing there waiting for them. Please follow me. See y'all later, Kiba, good luck, Naruto said as he and the others ran out of the room. The newly christened Team 8 was meeting in a nearby dango shop. Of course, they were allowed entry after Kurenai had convinced the owner to let them in. Reason why they couldn't enter? Naruto. This made Shino confused because he couldn't see anything wrong with Naruto that would have been a reason to deny him entry. So how about we get to know one another? Kurenai asked as she sat across from her 3 students. What do you want to know? Shino asked. Well, I want to know your likes, dislikes, hobbies, and dreams for the future, Kurenai said. You know what, I'll start. My name is Kurenai Yuhi. I like genjutsu, my friends, and the village. I dislike perverts and people who think females can't make good kunoichi. My hobbies are gardening, and hanging out with my friend Anko. For the future, I want to become a highly skilled genjutsu user. Now how about you, young lady? Hinata blushed and said, My name is Hinata H. Hyuga, I like my FA family, Naruto-kun, and S sweet things. I dislike mean people, S seafood, and the caged bee bird seal. My hobbies are F flower pressing, training, A and spending time W with Naruto-kun. I want to become the H Hyuga head A and abolish the seal. I also want to S start AFF family 001 day. She finished that last part with a major blush and a discreet look at Naruto, but only Kurenai caught it. Very interesting, okay, next is Shino, Kurani said. Shino pushed up his glasses and said, My name is Shino Aburame. I like socializing with people who don't fear me, and insects. I dislike those who harm insects for no reason. My hobbies are practicing my social skills and examining insects. My goal for the future is to become the next Aburame clan head. Kurenai blinked and said, Well, that was informative. Okay, Naruto, you finish up. Naruto grinned and began, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen, hanging out with my friends, especially Hinata-chan, Gigi, and Ba-chan. I dislike people who are mean to others for no reason at all, and ghosts. My hobbies are training, and practicing with Hinata-chan. My goal is to become the next Hokage. Datbeo. I can see that you've got a lot of enthusiasm, that's good, Kurenai said. Now I'm afraid to tell you all this, but you're not really genin yet. Naturally, Naruto was the first to react. What do you mean? He yelled. What I mean is that those genin exams that you took the other day, were only there to weed out the weakest of the weak. All Junins who are assigned a squad must administer an additional test to see who can make the cut. What is the test? Shino asked. This test will be given to you all tomorrow. Come to training ground 16 at 8 o'clock, and be prepared to work hard if you want to keep those headbands, Kurenai said as she put down some money and left the restaurant. So, Naruto began, who's nervous about this test we're getting? I'm a little nervous, Hinata said, but I'm going to do my best. I agree with Hinata-san, we should all put in our best effort if we want to become genin of the village, Shino told him. Alright, let's work together and pass this stupid test, Naruto declared. Both clan heirs nodded in agreement and left the dango shop to go home. However, Naruto stopped Hinata from leaving when Shino was out of sight. And Naruto-kun, Hinata asked, I did promise to tell you about my new heart, right? Naruto said. Hinata nodded and allowed the Uzumaki to lead her to the park where there was barely a soul there. Hinata-chan, can you check to see if anyone's around? Naruto asked. After sweeping the area with her Byakugan, Hinata confirmed that they were all alone. Naruto then took off his trenchcoat and showed Hinata his earth heart. Where did you get it? She asked. Naruto sighed and began to explain. Well, I was hanging around training ground 27 after the party your family threw when I ran into Iruka-sensei and Mizuki fighting in the forest. Mizuki stole something from the Hokage and was running from the ninja when Iruka-sensei caught up to him. Right before he could kill Iruka-sensei, I jumped in and began to fight Mizuki. Luckily Iruka-sensei managed to tire him out before I fought him. I beat Mizuki and Gigi and Ba-chan jumped in and said that they got everything that tells them who Mizuki was working for. Then they allowed me to take the Tem's heart. Oh Naruto-kun, Hinata cried as she hugged him tightly. Hey, Hinata-chan. Naruto exclaimed as he was stunned by his friend's actions. I'm fine, there's nothing to be afraid of. Still, Hinata began, I can't help but be worried about you. Naruto smiled gently and returned Hinata's embrace while saying, thank you Hinata-chan, you're a true friend. Tomorrow training ground 16. Naruto arrived at the training ground to see Hinata slumped against a tree taking a nap. The Uzumaki smirked as he watched her sleep with a smile, she was obviously having a good dream. Good morning Naruto-san. Naruto jumped into the air and looked back to see Shino standing behind him. You know, sneaking up on people isn't the best way to get friendly with them, Naruto said. My apologies, I was unaware that it was something wrong to do, Shino said. Naruto just waved him off and went to sit next to Hinata. Shino went to sit on the other side of the Hyuga girl and closed his eyes as he felt a slight breeze flow through the area. You know how much time is left before she gets here? Naruto asked. Shino thought for a moment and said, I believe that we have 5 minutes until Kurenai-sensei arrives. More like 5 seconds, Kurenai said as she dropped down from a tree. Hello everyone, are we ready to begin? Naruto nodded and said, let me wake Hinata up first. But before Naruto could do anything, Shino grabbed his shoulder. You're not going to shout out that there's a cinnamon bun being sold, are you? He whispered. No, of course not, Naruto said as he pulled out a small scroll with the kanji for emergency written on it. He opened it and unsealed a cinnamon bun. I brought one, he finished as he put the cinnamon near Hinata. Her head turned in the direction of the sweet as he held it near her. He moved it side to side, and everyone, except Shino, had to hold in their laughter when Hinata's head moved with it. Then when Naruto blinked, the cinnamon bun was gone and there was a small stinging sensation on his fingers. She bit me, he thought as he watched Hinata's eyes flutter open and she took in her surroundings. What is it? Hinata asked as she slowly stood up. Nothing, Naruto said quickly, a little too quickly. Hinata stared at him suspiciously but put it in the back of her mind as she stood up and faced her sensei along with her team. Shino pushed up his glasses and asked, what do we have to do in this test? Kurenai smiled and said, it's very simple. The primary function of this team was to be a tracking team. So you're going to use your tracking skills to locate and subdue me before this timer runs out. She then pulled out a clock and set it down on a nearby post. Seems simple enough. Anything else we need to know? Naruto asked as he adjusted the belt on his coat. If you want to catch me, you guys are going to come after me with the intention of killing me, Kurenai said. That means that you all need to use everything you know if you want to catch me. But what if YUG get hurt? Hinata asked. Don't worry about me, Kurenai said. You need to work hard if you want to pass this test. So when do we start? Naruto asked. Kurenai smirked and said, right now. She then vanished in a swirl of cherry blossoms. This was a genjutsu, Shino said. Naruto sighed, great, I hate genjutsu. Then I guess you'll dislike the fact that our sensei is known as the genjutsu mistress of Konoha, Shino told him. Naruto groaned in response. Where do we start looking? Hinata asked. Allow me, my insects can already detect a small trail of chakra that matches Kurenai sensei, Shino said as he raised his arms. A small cloud of insects flew out and began to fly in one direction. The trio of genin quickly followed the bugs as they flew deeper into the forest. After a half hour of running, the three friends reached a small clearing where the insects were just buzzing around, seemingly lost. Is she here? Naruto asked. This is where the trail ends, Shino said. So, logically, she must be in this area. I'll see if she's here, Hinata said as she stepped forward. She made several hand seals and said, Byakugan. Her vision expanded and she could see her teammates behind her and their chakra. Shino's was being drained into one section of his body at a slow rate, most likely where his insects were. Naruto's was bright and energetic, and she could see the two other sources of chakra on his back. She then looked elsewhere and noticed a faint amount of chakra in the trees above them, behind their current position. There, Hinata said as she pointed to where the chakra was and her teammates sprung into action. Shino sent a swarm of insects to where she was pointing and Naruto jumped into the trees as the bugs surrounded him like a shield. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto cried as he put his hands into the cross-shaped seal and created 10 clones that leapt into the bushes with him. Kurenai jumped out and clashed with the nearest Naruto, kunai in their hands. Another Naruto dropped down from above and attempted to slam his foot into the Junin. Kurenai threw the Naruto she was fighting with into the one that was attacking and watched as they both popped into smoke. 2 more Kage Bunshin, accompanied by a swarm of insects, jumped out of the trees and attacked Kurenai. She dispelled them with 3 quick hits and ducked as Hinata came in with her palm outstretched and coated with chakra. Kurenai was then engaged in a taijutsu battle against the Hyuga and got 2 of her chakra points blocked in her left arm before she knocked Hinata away, only to have to dodge the last 5 of Naruto's Kage Bunshin as they all attacked at once. You guys are good, Kurenai said as she jumped back and threw a kunai at the feet of one of the Kage Bunshin. But you still need to improve. The kunai then exploded and dispelled the Bunshin as the real Naruto was knocked out of the tree by the explosion. She's getting away. Hinata yelled as she watched Kurenai run off. Shino lifted Naruto to his feet and the genin began to chase after her. Hinata-chan, can you see her? Naruto asked as he and his teammates jumped in the direction that their sensei fled. Hi, follow me, Hinata said as she jumped forward and began to lead her friends through the forest. The trio followed the Hyuga for several minutes until they reached another clearing where Hinata stopped and began to look around. Did you lose her? Naruto asked. She was here and then she disappeared, Hinata said. There is something in the air that is disturbing my insects, I am of no use here, Shino said as he attempted to send out another swarm. Meanwhile, Kurenai was hiding in the trees while applying a special genjutsu that hid her from the Byakugan. Next to her was a small pile of leaves that released a scent that neutralized the insects used by the Aburame clan. I wonder what you're going to do to track me down, Naruto, Kurenai thought as she observed the genin from her hiding place. Maybe this part O of the test is F for you, Naruto-kun, Hinata suggested as she deactivated her Byakugan. I have to agree with her, Naruto, Shino said. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment before he opened them and said, alright, but I need you guys to be calm when I do this. Once he got the confirming nods, he walked forward before he stood in the middle of the clearing. Naruto then slammed both of his hands on the ground and hundreds of threads raced out in all directions. Shino was startled by this but didn't show it, and Hinata was used to it after seeing his threads so many times. In the trees, Kurenai was flabbergasted at Naruto's ability and didn't notice when the threads began to climb up the trees. Once she noticed, several of the threads bumped into her sandals. Naruto smirked when he felt his threads send him a message, one saying that they found his sensei. Naruto then sent another message to his threads and waited. Hinata and Shino watched in awe as all the threads stopped moving, before they all shot into a certain tree. Kurenai jumped out of the tree, wide-eyed and high on adrenaline. What are you guys waiting for? Get her, Naruto yelled as he coordinated his threads to try and wrap around the Kunoichi Junin. This knocked Hinata and Shino out of their stupor and they jumped after their sensei while she was distracted by the threads. 8 trigrams air palm, Hinata cried as she sent a condensed wave of air at Kurenai. The Junin was hit in the stomach and poofed into a wooden log, signaling that it was a kawarimi. Behind you, Shino said as he saw their sensei appear behind the young girl. She quickly sent a kick into Hinata's side that sent her flying before she jumped away as crimson threads pierced the area she was in. Hinata was caught by a mass of threads and gently placed on a branch. Kaden. Fire bullet jutsu. Naruto cried as he spat out several small fireballs that Kurenai dodged with ease. Kaden. Fireball jutsu. Kurenai cried as she went on the offensive. Naruto quickly made a wall of threads that shielded him from the flames as the fireball impacted against it. Shino then leapt towards Kurenai and threw a punch, one that she dodged easily. But before she could counterattack, Hinata came down from above and attempted to drive her chakra-coated fingers into her sensei's shoulder. Kurenai then made several hand seals and said, "Megan, hell viewing technique." A whirlwind of leaves surrounded the trio of genin and they immediately felt a lightheadedness overcome them. Shino and Hinata easily overcame the genjutsu due to their clan abilities. But for Naruto, he was nearly caught in the genjutsu when he felt his chakra stop momentarily, jolting him back into reality. "I guess the Jongu can break me out of genjutsu, good," Naruto thought as he smirked. Kurenai was shocked that he was able to break free of her genjutsu, considering that he had no ability like the Sharingan or Byakugan, he didn't even cause himself pain. It must be those threads, Kurenai thought. They probably disrupt his chakra to help him. Naruto-kun, we can't catch her at this rate, Hinata said. "There's no need to worry, Hinata, I already have a plan in motion," Shino said. "We just need to keep her busy for a while." Naruto smirked and said, "I think I know what your plan is. Let's hope it works." Naruto then threw a fist at Kurenai, even though he was 20 feet away. Everyone, except Hinata, watched in shock as his forearm shot out towards Kurenai. The Junin moved just in time to watch the fist embed itself into the tree trunk. "Maybe they're taking the whole come at me with the intent to kill thing a little too far," Kurenai thought as she jumped away from a swarm of insects, only these were armed with stingers. "Jongu! Threading needles!" Naruto cried as he shot a wave of threads at Kurenai. She attempted to dodge them, but one wrapped around her leg and threw her to the ground where several more threads wrapped her up until she was in a cocoon. Shino sent a swarm to surround the Junin and Hinata had 2 fingers aimed at where her shoulder would be. "Hehe, looks like we win, Kurenai-sensei," Naruto said as he put his hands behind his head. Kurenai sighed and said, "Yes, you guys pass. Now can you please let me go?" Naruto complied and retracted his threads while Shino and Hinata backed away to stand next to Naruto. How did we do, sensei?" Hinata asked. "You guys did better than I expected," Kurenai said as she stood before her team. "Your tracking skills were better than I expected and you guys fought with a fierceness that surprised me." "So are we officially a team?" Shino asked. Kurenai smiled and said, "Yes, you guys are now officially members of Team 8. After cheers of happiness, courtesy of Naruto, were thrown around, Kurenai then got her team's attention. "So Naruto, care to tell me what is this ability of yours?" Kurenai asked. Naruto bit his lip in nervousness and looked at Hinata, who nodded her head in confirmation. He sighed and explained the conditions of how he got his Jongu. Hiruzen still hadn't told him the real story of how it happened though. "Naruto," Shino said as he placed a hand on the blonde's shoulder, "I want you to know that I can understand your situation and will support you however possible." Naruto smiled and said, "Thanks Shino, it's good to know. And here I was thinking that you were just a normal kid," Kurenai said as she rubbed her temples. "There's nothing normal about ninjas," Naruto said with a fox-like grin. Kurenai chuckled for a moment before she looked at her team and said, "Come on, let's go get some lunch to celebrate." Team 8 then left the training grounds and began walking towards the village. Chapter 8. Team Training. For 3 weeks, Team 8 has been training hard to improve upon their personal skills and teamwork. They would meet at the training grounds at 8 o'clock in the morning and commence with this schedule. 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock equals warm-ups. 9 o'clock to 10:30 equals teamwork exercises and chakra control. 10:30 to 12 o'clock equals sparring. 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock equals lunch break. 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock equals genjutsu detection and releasing. 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock equals missions. Each training session helped them become closer to one another and grow stronger each day. Of course, they never would have thought that Kurenai would be a drill sergeant with her being a new Junin. And they never expected how tortuous she could be with her genjutsu. Though, Hinata never complained when her genjutsus involved a certain Jinchuriki doing certain things that resulted in Hinata getting massive nosebleeds, much to Naruto's confusion, especially since she would never tell him about those genjutsus. And blush furiously whenever he came near her during those days. However, today was going to be a new experience for Team 8. Training Grounds 16. Did I ever mention how much I hate genjutsu? Naruto asked as he crossed his arms and huffed. Every day since we started, Shino told him as he observed a beetle that landed on his finger. Naruto just gave him a look while Hinata giggled at his face. Kurenai chuckled at her students' antics while they took a short break from their training. It's not my fault I can't cast a single one, Naruto said. Well, it kinda is, Kurenai said. The genjutsu that I know don't require a lot of chakra, and it's because of your large reserves that you can't cast any of them. Why must I be cursed with such a hurtful gift? Naruto wailed as anime tears fell down his face. Kurenai's sweat dropped and considered sending Naruto to a psychiatrist before shaking the thought from her head. Naruto-kun, it's not that bad, Hinata said as she tried to console her secret love. I know Hinata-chan, it's just very frustrating, Naruto said as he detached his arm and threw it up to grab an apple. He pulled back and handed the apple to Hinata, who blushed a bright red before she took the apple and ate it with a smile on her face. Alright, now let's. Kurenai was cut off when another person entered the training grounds. She had light brown eyes and purple hair that was done up in a spiky ponytail. She was wearing a mesh shirt that was practically see-through, reaching down to her thighs. An orange skirt was hanging from her hips, not even reaching her knees. She also had a tan trenchcoat that did nothing to hide her figure. What are you doing here, Anko? Kurenai asked. Hey Kur-chan, you're needed in the Hokage's office for a small mission, Anko said as she took out a dango stick and began to munch on it. But I'm training my team, Kurenai protested. What do you want me to do about it? I'm no teacher, Anko told her. Kurenai grinned and made a hand seal. Well now you are. She then vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving Anko and her 3 genin in the training grounds. Anko stood there with a blank look on her face before her brain processed the information. How could she leave me with these gakis? Anko wailed as she gripped her hair. Something tells me that we won't like this, Naruto said as he looked at the purple-haired ninja. Anko then stopped her wailing and turned to Team 8 with an unnerving smile on her face. Upon seeing the smile, Hinata went to hide behind Naruto, who had decided to hide behind Shino, who was glad that his jacket and shades were hiding his panicked expression. So, kiddies, let's start with some survival training, Anko said as her smile became more sadistic. She bit her thumb, made a few hand seals, and slammed her hand on the ground, resulting in a large cloud of smoke. When the smoke cleared, Anko could be seen standing on top of a silver large snake with green markings running across its body. The snake hissed at the genin while looking at them hungrily with its yellow eyes. Naruto-kun, I'm scared, Hinata said as she trembled at the sight of the large snake. USSSS summoned me, mistress. The snake asked. Yes, I did, Anko said as she stroked the snake's scales on its head. Kur-chan left me to take care of her team while she was summoned to the Hokage's office. So we're going to give these gakis some survival training. Kurenai SSSSSSAN left you to help her team. Mai questioned. Anko grumbled. Yeah, I can't believe it either. Now let the chase begin. The snake then lunged at Team 8, and the genin just barely managed to jump away as the reptile slammed into the ground and created a large dust cloud. When the smoke cleared, Mai and Anko were gone and a large hole was in the ground. Great, a snake that can dig, Naruto moaned as he tensed up, hearing a hiss behind him. Did anyone else hear that? He yelled as he whirled around, trying to find the snake. You're being paranoid, Shino told him as he sent out bugs. Hinata was looking around with her Byakugan and trying to find out where Anko and Mai went. Naruto-kun, behind you, Hinata yelled as she saw the duo racing to hit the blonde from behind. Naruto jumped out of the way and the ground burst open as Mai flew upwards, trying to swallow the genin as he tried to get away, keyword being tried. The snake closed its jaws around Naruto, resulting in the snake's eyes widening before spitting Naruto out as it began to gag. What the hell? Are you made of ramen? Mai screamed as she continued to spit in disgust. Oi, you have a problem with ramen. Naruto yelled back. Anko, Hinata and Shino watched with sweat drops as the Jinchuriki and the snake summon argued back and forth about ramen. Mai declaring that it was disgusting while Naruto argued that it was the food of Kami. That Gaki really loves his ramen, Anko muttered as she jumped back onto Mai's head. Can we get back to the tour, training? As you wish, Mai said as she lunged towards Naruto as he jumped into the air while slamming his heel on the snake's snout. Mai recoiled in slight pain, and backed up into Shino's waiting bugs. The insects began to suck on the chakra that held the summon in this realm instantly. Mai was able to shake off the insects before they took too much chakra. Hinata then began to fire several air palms at the snake, distracting it long enough for Naruto to wrap up the snake with his threads. Mai dug into the ground, forcing Naruto to let go unless he wanted to be dragged along for the ride. Not bad Gakis, but it's gonna take more than that to take down this snake, Enko said as she sat in a nearby tree and munched on some dango. Anybody know where that snake went? Naruto asked as he looked around. I don't see her anywhere, Hinata replied. She keeps changing locations before my insects can tell me where she is, Shino said with slight irritation. Cover me, I'm going to try using my threads, Naruto said as he knelt down and planted his hands on the ground. Hundreds of threads shot out from his sleeves and burrowed into the ground where they began to spread out and search for the snake. Naruto then grinned and began to pull on his threads, but was immediately pulled back. Seeing his struggle, Hinata grabbed onto Naruto while Shino grabbed Hinata and the three genin began to pull hard on the threads. Enko watched in amusement as the trio tried to drag Mai out of the ground, but that amusement turned into shock as the ground the threads dug into began to break. Moments later, a silver tail wrapped up in threads was slowly dragged out of the ground as it wiggled furiously. Let go of me, Mai yelled as she was dragged out of the ground, all wrapped up in threads. So do we pass Enko-san? Naruto asked as he tightened his threads around the snake. Enko was flabbergasted at how her summon was so easily taken down by three genin. She was broken out of her stupor by the sound of Kurenai laughing as she landed beside her friend. Kurenai-sensei. Team 8 yelled at the sudden appearance of their teacher. I thought you had a mission to go on. Naruto asked. Kurenai laughed and said, this was a little test my friend Enko wanted to give to you guys after I bragged about how well you've grown. So we created a little lie so you guys wouldn't think that I was in the area. Very elaborate, I never expected it, Shino said as he adjusted his shades. That W was very mean Kurenai-sensei, Hinata said. Well, I guess I could have just told you guys straight off the bat instead, Kurenai said as she rubbed the back of her head. Naruto waved her off and said, it's fine sensei, you were just doing what you thought was best. It's amazing how forgiving this kid is, Enko thought as she watched the teacher and her students interact. She then sent Mai back to her own realm, freeing her from her bonds in the process. So how come you never introduced us to your friend Kurenai-sensei? Naruto asked. Enko-chan's usually busy at the T&I department, she's one of their best interrogators, Kurenai explained. So don't do anything bad or you might have to deal with me, Enko joyously said as she licked a kunai, making the three genin shiver. Kurenai smirked and addressed her team, to celebrate your surviving of Enko's exercise, I'm going to take you guys to the Higurashi weapons shop to get some weapons, something I should have done a month ago. Are you going to be paying for us as sensei? Hinata asked. Hi, and don't worry Hinata, I already got Hiyashi-sama's permission on you getting a weapon. Despite the Hyuga's tradition of only using kunai and shuriken, Kurenai told her only female student. Well, I'm gonna go and attend to the dango stick that's calling my name, Enko said as she disappeared in a puff of smoke. Kurenai then led her team back into the village and down to the market district. Higurashi weapons shop. Kurenai opened the door and led her genin inside the store. The shelves were filled with every weapon imaginable and makeable. Attending the counter was a girl who was only a year older than them. She was wearing a pink sleeveless vest with dark green pants. Her hair was done in two buns that made her look like a panda. She had a Konoha forehead protector placed on her head with several bangs falling on the side of it. Welcome to Higurashi weapons shop. The girl greeted with a small bow. Kurenai gave a bow of her own and said, hello, I'm Kurenai Yuhi, leader of Team 8. I was wondering if you would be able to help my team get some weapons that suit them. The girl grinned and walked around the counter while saying, of course I can. My name's Tenten Higurashi by the way. She then grabbed Hinata and dragged her forward, resulting in an eep coming from the Hyuga heiress. Tenten began to circle the younger girl like a prowling lion. You don't have a lot of muscle on your arms. Despite being a Hyuga, You appear to be a person who would prefer to not kill you enemies, Tenten noted as she observed Hinata. You can tell all that just by looking at a person. Naruto asked in disbelief. It's one of the skills that my two-san taught me, Tenten declared proudly. She then went into one of the aisles and disappeared for a few minutes. When she came back, she had a bow and a quiver of arrows in her hands. These are special, Tenten began. The quiver has multiple storage seals inside so you can carry a larger number of arrows. You just reach back and the sensor seal will release an arrow into your grasp. There is a connection seal on the bow that lets you know when you have less than 20 arrows. The arrows are also special. You can infuse your chakra into it to shut down your opponent's tenketsu since you're a Hyuga. Thank you very much, Hinata said as she bowed. I'm shocked. After being Neji's teammate I expected every other Hyuga to be a cold and unimpressionable person, Tenten said. Wait, you're on a team with Neji? Naruto asked. Tenten nodded and Naruto immediately grabbed her hand while saying, I feel so sorry for you. You're stuck with that Tem every single day. Everyone, sans Hinata and Tenten, sweat dropped, thinking that Naruto was over-exaggerating. I can give you some lessons on using these sometime, Tenten offered. I can't accept that, Hinata declined. Tenten shook her head and, I'm free on every Thursday so there's no need to worry about wasting any of my time. Hinata accepted the training offer after the rest of her team encouraged her, especially Naruto. Now for you, Tenten said as she turned her attention to Shino. She began to circle the Aburame and make several notes about her findings. Like most Aburame, you rely on you insects for long-range attacks. Your clan does not put too much of an importance on taijutsu so you could be considered the opposite of a Hyuga in that regard. I think I have something that you'll like, Tenten said as she retreated back into the store once more. This time, she came back with two katanas that seemed to have been cut down from their original size. Just plain katanas, Tenten-san? Shino questioned. Tenten shook her head and explained, these katanas are made of chakra metal, so you can conduct your chakra through them to give them an added effect depending on your chakra nature. They might be a little long for you, but I think you'll be able to handle it. I appreciate this very much, Shino said as he gave a grateful bow to the older girl. I believe I can get my cousin Shika to give me some lessons. She also uses a sword along with her insects, Shino said as he examined the blades. Tenten waved him off and approached her last customer. She took a longer time observing Naruto, resulting in him becoming slightly nervous from her close examination. Hinata had to remind herself that Tenten was just doing her job and not gazing at Naruto like he was a piece of meat. Like she does when nobody is looking. You're really unique. I'm having a hard time figuring out what weapon might suit you, Tenten said as she walked around the blonde. Your muscles say that you like to fight with your hands, but something tells me that you can extend your range with it. Naruto slightly flinched and continued to listen. You don't look like the sword type, but I think I have something that you'll really like. Tenten then retreated into the store once again and left the group alone for 5 minutes. After she returned she came back with a box and set it down on the counter. These are something that Kona has recently been making, and it just strikes me as something that fits you, Tenten explained as she tore off the tape and opened the box. Inside were 2 metal gauntlets that had pointed metal fingers. There was a larger area that surrounded the wrist section that held a spinning dial with 4 blank spots on it. It's the same thing the Demon Brothers wore, except with the following changes that will be said. Wow, these things look so cool, Naruto shouted as he picked one up and began to examine it. You didn't even hear about the features yet, Tenten said with a grin on her face. The fingers are made of a specialized metal that will allow you to perform hand seals without any problems. This spinning dial is here so you can write storage seals on the 4 blank spots, making it a good place to store anything you need to carry. It's also made of chakra metal. Who came up with this type of weapon? Kurenai asked. Chu-san said that it was mentioned by one of the Shinobi Council members in a meeting and the Hokage wanted to see if it would make a good weapon for our ninja, Tenten explained, having remembered what her father told her. I really like these things, Naruto said as he tried both of them on. The gauntlets felt comfortable and fit him like a glove. True to Tenten's word, the fingers were very flexible, yet durable. He was able to make every single hand seal that he knew with little difficulty. Alright, how much do I have to pay? Kurenai asked, wanting to get to the bad news, for her at least. Tenten walked back to the register and pushed a few buttons before turning back to the Junin and declaring in a cheerful tone, $40,000. Kurenai froze and promptly fainted when she heard the amount. Hinata ran towards her sensei and shook her shoulders to try and wake her up since she was familiar with fainting. Kurenai woke up a few minutes later and took out her wallet with shaky hands and pulled out a large amount of dollars. Tenten happily snatched up the money and put it in the register while Kurenai held a small funeral for her wallet. Wonderful, now I'm going to have to eat ration bars for at least a month. Kurenai wailed in her thoughts. Thanks for buying this stuff for us, Kurenai-sensei. Naruto called out as he and his friends ran off to test out their new weapons. Hyuga Complex. Hiyashi was sitting in his office looking over some reports. A Hyuga Chunin was assaulted on a border patrol mission by a team from Kumo. She and her team were able to fight them off, but received a few injuries in the process, nothing threatening though. This disturbed Hiyashi greatly. This was the third attempt Kumo made for the Byakugan this month. He thought that they would stop after the event on Hinata's third birthday, but he was unfortunately wrong. They started their attempts again only 2 years ago. Thankfully they only happened when any Hyuga was near the Konoha-Kumo border, but it still bothered him. Another thing that was bothering him was that he was starting to receive marriage proposals from suitors. Not only did it make him feel like they were aiming at his daughter like she was a prize, they suitors were practically close to his age. He would never even consider accepting a marriage proposal from any of them. Hiyashi was a firm believer that people should just get into a relationship the old-fashioned way, meaning that two people should just start out with a date and see how it goes. After all, it worked out wonderfully for him and Hitomi. Sama. Hiyashi was shaken from his thoughts when Hanabi rushed into his office with a grin on her face. Yes, Hanabi. What is it? Hiyashi asked as he put his files away. He could get back to them later. Or tomorrow. Hinata Ne-chan and Nato Ni-san came back, and they have some new things with them. So Kurenai-san finally took them to get weapons, Hiyashi thought. I wonder what they got. Hiyashi got up and followed his youngest daughter to where she left her older sister and her brother figure. Hanabi led him out to the gardens where Hinata and Naruto were showing their weapons to Hitomi, who was looking happy for the two genin. Hiyashi walked up to the three and said, So I heard that you two finally got your weapons, care to show them? Hinata showed her bow and arrow to her father who took them in his hands and examined them before handing them back to his daughter. I must say, this is a good weapon for you to use, Hiyashi said. The material is a good chakra conductor and very durable. The seals are also good and don't look like they'll wear out anytime soon. How do you know about seals, T2-sama? Hinata asked. My sensei was Jiraiya of the Sanin. He was considered an expert in Fuinjutsu and passed a few lessons to us. Only one of my teammates was able to become better than him, Hiyashi explained. Wanna check out my new weapons, Hiyashi-sama? Naruto asked with a large grin. Hiyashi looked and saw Naruto's gauntlets as they gleamed in the sun. They make you look somewhat threatening, Hiyashi said. Naruto became irritated and sent the Hyuga head a small glare. What do ya mean, somewhat threatening? Naruto asked as he tapped his foot. I think it's because of your whiskers, Nato Ni-san, Hanabi said, they make you look cute. Isn't that right, Ne-chan? Hanabi nudged Hinata, who squeaked when she was put on the spotlight. Blushing, Naruto turned away and declared, they do not make me look cute. They make me look scary. Ah, but you looked so adorable back when you were only a little boy, Hitomi said, making the young Uzumaki turn into a tomato. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.